Hey guys, how are you? Welcome into another episode of the Sharps Report with BettingPros. I'm your host, Matt Perrault. You guys normally see me on the Daily Juice podcast, but this is our monthly conversation about everything going on in the sports betting world. People making news, people making noise, new platforms, new opportunities, and new things you guys can go and use in the sports betting space. Our guest this month is Sim Harmon. He is the CEO of Kutt, the social betting platform that we're going to get all into. Sim, Matt Perrault, thank you for being here. How are you today?
I'm good, sir. Thank you so much for having me tonight. I do appreciate it.
This is going to be fun because you guys are doing some pretty cool things in the space. If someone walks up to you and says, okay, you're Kutt, you're the social betting platform, what's that? What is Kutt?
The million-dollar question, right? So Kutt is peer-to-peer betting where you can bet on anything with a verifiable outcome directly against someone else. So in many ways, we are very similar to an exchange, but we are much more social, right? And so from day one, what I tell everyone is that we are social first, and what you experience on Kutt will have a very similar feel to a social network in the sense that everyone has a user profile. You can chat with other people. We have leaderboards. We have groups. We have all these different things that really make it a bit more engaging and community oriented than your traditional betting platform, right? And then again, very importantly to point out, which is we are not specifically just a sports betting platform, hence why we call ourselves the social betting platform. And we do allow betting on basically anything and everything: sports, politics, pop culture, and even personal events. So,
All right,
yes, social betting.
we'll talk about how you can get involved in what it is to use the platform here in just 1 second. But what's your background? How did you come to this? How did this idea come to be? And how long did it take you guys to go from idea to actually implementing the platform?
Yeah, well, I think I start every story, every origin story by telling people I'm a degenerate gambler. No, I'm kidding. I'm not, not actually, but I have a proclivity to bet, and I have long been a bettor myself, and I enjoy betting on everything. And so the genesis of this really was me sitting at the lunch table in high school with my buddies, making $5 bets on NBA games, right? Who would score more points tonight, Kobe or LeBron? And I tell that story over and over and over, and it really is true. We would sit there 14, 15, 16 years old and just say, hey, I'll bet you $5 LeBron scores more. I bet you $10 Kobe scores more. We'd come to school the next day, settle up, which usually meant a rolling IOU where no one ever actually paid. And what I realized is that's actually a fairly common problem for people, which is making bets with friends that never actually get paid or get paid in a way that, doesn't involve cash, which is never fun, right? When you make a bet on the golf course or something and someone's, oh, let me get you a beer tonight. And you're like, buddy, actually you owe me $50. Somehow these things are not computing, right? So that was the genesis of this. And in 2018, whenever PASPA was repealed, that's kind of when the light bulb went off, right? Which is to say, hey, I think that this whole idea of friend to friend betting can be a business idea. Admittedly, I had no clue what it took to start a business. Some days I still question myself if I know what it takes to start and run a business. But what that looked like was several years of chasing my tail, learning about things like not fun stuff, incorporation, legal, regulatory type of stuff, payment processing, et cetera, et cetera. And then software development, right? And so it took a couple years to really get the idea off the ground. And we finally launched in November of 2022. We went live on the App Store. And we have been there ever since. So that's a brief background of Kutt, but obviously the details are a lot more fun.
Right. How has it been to go from, you're still a startup, but go from like this idea to then into the App Store now in 2025? How has it gone, and what have you guys learned about implementing this? Because, well, you're legal in most states. So how have you taken this to market, and what does the market bear to you guys? What have you learned?
Yeah, it's been a very meandering journey, and I think if you talk to a lot of startups, they would echo that, right? Which is, I think taking a step back, I think the media portrays startup life as this glamorous lifestyle. Hey, you're an entrepreneur, you raise money pretty quickly. They highlight all the success stories. They don't talk about the trials and tribulations and the grind, and it truly is a grind. And so when I talk to a lot of people and they say, oh, I've just heard about Kutt. How long have you been live? And it's always it's a funny conversation to say, hey, we've actually been here for a couple of years. we unfortunately missed, I think, a lot of the what I'll call, yeah, I'm not easy money, quote unquote. Back in 2021, 2022, I think several other companies in the space raised some money in 21, 22. We missed that, unfortunately. And so I always have felt like we're a bit behind on the eight ball when it comes to just getting our name out there, doing marketing, um, and just kind of promoting ourselves. So what I would say is this: it's definitely been a lot slower of a process than I initially anticipated. I think every person that starts a company, at least maybe if they don't expect it, they at least hope that the process is fairly quick. This is going to be instant adoption. People like the idea. We're going to have 1 million users in the first 6 months, and it didn't quite happen that way. All right. And so what I would say is, especially in this particular industry, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that you have to deal with, right? From the legal perspective, regulatory perspective. I mentioned payment processing a second ago, right? When I started this, hey, let's just accept credit cards, let's accept debit cards, let's accept, carrier pigeon, right? It didn't work that way, and it doesn't work that way. It took us 12 months to find a credit card processor, right? And
Wow.
and I'll give you a quick behind the scenes about what goes on in my daily life. Now we have to deal with chargebacks, right? And so even now, full circle moment, I'm debating whether or not credit cards are even worth it anymore, because it's a constant headache of people committing fraud, right? And so it's little things like that that you don't think about when starting a business. I think everyone thinks of the marketing and the promotion and the product, but a lot of the foundational stuff is the stuff that takes a very long time. And that's something that there is a massive on ramp, specifically to this industry, that takes a while, for most of these startups to have to overcome.
Yeah.
Banking partners, we've been kicked off of banks before,
Right.
to find new banks. And so, anyways, it's been a long process, but yeah, I feel like in the last years when we finally hit our stride and we're finally doing a bit more, whether it's hitting the conference circuit, going to events, getting our name out there, doing some marketing, that's really been where I think we've done a better job in the last year of all this.
Is there an origin story to the name? I think I understand cut, like get your cut, but is there an origin story to the name?
It's a good question. Um, when I was thinking about naming Kutt, two things I was thinking about is, one, can I find a gambling term, a betting term, right? And then number two, is there a website available? Or is there an existing brand? So I went about it probably all the wrong ways. And then you have to design the logo and things like that. That's a separate story. But for me, I finally landed on Kutt. Okay, I like the idea of, hey, cut out the casino, cut out the middleman. Hey, let's cut it. Come to find out, there's hey, I got to add a K and two T's, in order to make this work. And Kutt, Kutt, our name, Kutt.com was actually available for sale. So I ended up buying that, and then I committed to the name. And I got to tell you that it took me probably a solid year to really get on board with the name. But now, now I'm very proud of it, and I like it. And I also like the fact that it's different, and I think that a
Mhm.
lot of people in this space, um, and I guess startups more generally speaking, a lot of people are kind of in your face about the name. Ours hopefully gives a bit of a sense of intrigue, and is a little bit intentionally vague so that people have to peel back the onion a bit to find out what we do. And I actually like that. As counterintuitive as that sounds, I actually like that.
I think the answer to this question is going to be everybody, because everyone who runs a platform like yours, you want to be available and you want to be used by everyone. But if I had to draw a picture of what the average user that will come in and find Kutt to be either A, profitable, or B, something that they enjoy using, what does that person look like? Are they a straight beginner? Are they somebody who has some type of knowledge in betting? Or is it a sharp person that's been limited at a book and who's looking to get down, a decent amount of money on a play?
Yeah, no, and that's a great question. And I think this goes back to, our differentiator slash, how we position ourselves. So look, as I said from the beginning, we are a social betting platform where you can bet on anything against anyone. With that said, low hanging fruit, finding sports bettors, right? Sports constitutes right now about 90% of our markets, the betting markets at least. And so we do appeal, to the sports betting demographic. Now, what that looks like on Kutt it's kind of a barbell. It's a end of the spectrum concept where on one side of the spectrum you have what I'll call casual bettors, right? People that want to bet $5 and $10 on something. Hey, I'm a first time bettor, second time bettor. I don't do this a lot, but it's a great way for me as a bettor to engage with my friends or engage with other fans, right? On the other end of the spectrum, you have what you can just call sharps, line shoppers, arbitrage bettors, people who are a bit more proficient and have been betting for a while. And they use our site fairly regularly, fairly consistently, because we do have better pricing than the traditional books, right? We may not be as cheap as some of the other exchanges out there, but we currently charge 3% as our transaction fee on every single transaction, which is obviously going to be a lot better than what you see at the FanDuel and DraftKings of the world. So to answer your question, kind of it varies a bit. And I think that we sit at a very interesting place in the industry because we do actually attract both. I think exchanges, for better or worse, get the kind of get pigeonholed for saying, hey, they only attract sharp bettors. But I think for us specifically, the social aspect of it also attracts the other end of the spectrum, which is something that I'm really proud about and happy about because it brings on an entirely new demographic who's not used to betting, or who may be overwhelmed when they go to DraftKings or FanDuel.
On your website, kutt.com, KUTT.com, there's an FAQ, basically a question and answer. And on there, you're pretty open about the fee. You're pretty open about what you guys charge for the process of using this platform. How much pushback do you get from customers when it comes to that? And how difficult is that to explain to the customer as to, hey, we're a service. We're not taking a vig per se. You're just paying us for the ability to link you with another person that wants the other side of the bet or the play.
And that's a good question. And I guess to frame this question, I would say, firstly, I consider ourselves an escrow agent for all intents and purposes, right?
Okay.
So on Kutt, you can bet directly against your friends. We'll hold your money, and the payouts are instant as soon as the event is over. You can bet against strangers. You can bet against whoever, right? So again, it has that exchange type model, but you can also send private bets to someone you already know. And so I've always thought of ourselves as a bit of an escrow agent more than anything. With regards to that, with regards to the fee, yes, we are very open about that. It's plastered several times across the app as well as on our website. And as I mentioned in the last question, it's not as cheap as some of the other exchanges. So to your point, when we do have sharps come on, when we do have guys who are line shopping, who are price sensitive bettors, they do come on and they say, hey, I like it, but maybe I could go pay a bit less over at XYZ exchange. And what I tell them is that's fine. Like, look, we're never going to be the cheapest. I think if some people had their way, we would be free. We would not charge any fees, right? And so it's a delicate balance between wanting to make the user happy, but also running a business, right? You want to make money and scale. What I would tell you and what I tell other people who are listening to this is we are not the cheapest out there, for sure. I would say we are still relatively cheap. Especially when you compare us to the traditional books. And then you have to ask yourself whether or not that extra quote unquote fee, and again, it's 3% compared to, the 9 and 10% traditional book. You ask yourself if the extra features on Kutt are worth it. And my answer would be yes. The social features, we actually have rewards. We give cash back on every single bet that you make. We give referral bonuses. We give all these different kind of, hey, take a bet for plus 200 odds or more, and you get, some coins that which you can redeem for cash back. We have all these other features that I do think are worth that 3% fee. And again, we're never going to be free. We have a business to run. And so in my head, I think we sit at a good enough spot because I guess we could always go lower if we wanted to, or tiered if we wanted to, versus if we would have started at 0 or close to 0, it's very tough to increase over time.
As you guys are watching the Sharp Report, remember you guys can go and download the BettingPros app if you have not done so. It's a great place to be able to track your bets with Sportsbook Sync. Automatically track your bets across all major sportsbooks in one spot. Easily monitor your bet performance by sport, bet type, including game, picks, props, and parlays. Customized betting systems are available as well for winning trends and proper opportunities. You can get a 7-day free trial with the Betting Pros Premium that you can go and do all sorts of fun stuff with Prop Bet Cheat Sheet and Prop Bet Analyzer. You go and download the app, bettingpros.com/apps. Use the promo code JUICE, and you get a 7-day free trial. When you go to the upgrade screen, that's where you insert the word JUICE for a 7-day free trial. Okay, let's walk through a bet. All right, so I have an idea, right? I want to say coming up at the Open Championship, I believe that an American's going to win the Open Championship. And I look at a sports book and the odds are minus 150 on an American to win the Open Championship. I want to go and offer that somebody cheaper at minus 120. How does it work? How do I get that bet to go on Kutt, that play on Kutt?
So I'll start by saying that we are constantly improving our market offering. And we actually recently hired someone to start putting up a lot more markets for us. Historically, we've been your traditional football, baseball, basketball, hockey type of betting markets, but now we're working on what I'll call more esoteric markets, right? So first thing is, do we already have it up? If not, It's a very simple process. You go to our homepage, and actually a couple places across the app. There's a button that says request a bet. Can't miss it. You press request a bet. There's a short form. Hey, this is what I want to see. Here are the odds that I think are fair. We receive a notification immediately, and then we can put that bet up on the app. From there, it's as simple as finding that bet on our games tab. So you go to the games page, games tab, you search for that, and then you actually have two options. Number one, you can create your own bet, right? Or number two, you could actually see if anyone has already posted a bet, for that market, and you could accept that bet. When you create your own bet, it's very important to point out that all of our odds are fully customizable. So to your point a second ago, if you see, I forget what numbers you use, but plus 140 or, maybe, let's say, you got plus 150 for a specific, player in the championship. If you want plus 160, it's as simple as clicking a button that says custom odds. And then you can input your own odds for that. And then you click submit. That bet is posted to the community, and then someone else can take the other side of that bet.
How unique can I get? Like, can I bet on like my member guest? Can I create a market for a hole in one for me and my both? Like, four of my friends are playing golf and we're going to go who shoots the lowest round. Like, how crazy can I get?
Yeah. So look, when we started Kutt, that was the goal, right? The goal is to say, hey, these people, friends, groups, group chats, whatever, people are already doing this, right? And there needs to be a more efficient way to do that. Take fantasy football, for instance. You've got your group chat where your buddies talk back and forth about fantasy football. Then you have to pay each other via Venmo each week, or at the beginning of the season, hopefully. And then you have a complete separate mechanism, usually Yahoo or ESPN or whatever, to actually track all that. So from its inception, we aimed to be the platform or the app that could do all three, right? You have the bet, you have the markets, you have the record keeping. Number two, you have the bet settlement, right? We actually take care of every single bet settlement. As soon as the bet is over, within a minute, every bet is settled and you receive your money. And then number three, we have the social aspect as well. So from the beginning, we have always aspired to be the one-stop shop, right? And so to your point, that includes personal bet. And so as of right now, look, I'll be very transparent about this. It is not a large portion of our app, these quote unquote personal bets, but it is getting bigger, right? And this process looks a little bit like this. Or maybe I should say roadmap looks a little bit like this. So right now we take a lot of publicly verifiable stuff, right? Pop culture, politics, just fun stuff like that, right? We already put that up. Next, currently, and also what we're working on right now, are finding existing communities that want to monetize their audience via betting markets. So as an example, we have a partnership with a company called Roast Battle League, right? Roast Battle League, literally, celebrity roasts, like comedy roasts, right?
Yep.
So they're actually, Roast Battle League is a league where they have different roasts in different cities. They will literally have multiple comedians. Then they'll have a judging panel. Then they have an audience. And so they go through, comedians roast each other. The judges say, oh, I think comedian A won, comedian B won, whatever. The audience gets to vote on it. And they were like, hey, we want love for our audience to be able to bet on this. And so we are partnering with groups like that, companies like that, brands like that, to quickly put up markets, and actually have the audience, the community, the followers bet on whatever that brand wants to bet on, right? And then the next step, which we're also working on this parallel, would be the bets that you mentioned a second ago, right? You and your buddies are at a golf tournament, like, hey, anyone, hit the pin today. Who has the longest drive, things like that. And to answer your question, yes, we can put those up, but we're working on a more streamlined and scalable way so that you could create that bet quickly. And instead of us having to actually accept or confirm that bet, you could actually just have that confirmed on your end, and it only shows up on your app with your buddy's app. So yeah.
So let me play devil's advocate for just 1 second, because we all have that one friend that may be a little bit of a not the most on the up and up type of dude. We all know him, whoever he may be.
Yeah.
Who gets to determine if it's not publicly verifiable? Who gets to determine that that's what actually happened?
And that's the crux of the issue, right? And so, that's something that we have not perfected. And I don't think you ever will perfect that, right? What
No.
we've currently, our current solution would be some sort of consensus mechanism, right? Where, you pick a third party arbiter that says, hey, I'm going to be the judge. Both people have to agree on that person ahead of time. And in order for the money to be unlocked and that settlement to actually happen, that third party judge has to actually, confirm that, hey, these are the results that happen, right?
That actually happened.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, look, you're right. I think that's why that's why this portion of our platform has not scaled in the way that we expect it to eventually. Because as of right now, it is tough to do that at mass scale.
Right.
But look, I mean, I think there is also, even taking it bit by bit, like breaking it down, like I think there's a ton of value in having even just the social component, of you and your buddies in a group on Kutt, right? Even if you're not actually betting on, even if we're not actually handling the transaction for bets like that, at least one component of that entire scenario you just mentioned can be on Kutt. And I think for us, it's going to be baby steps, right? First, get your group chat on Kutt. Then we start creating markets for you. Then you create your own markets, and it'll go from there.
Let me tell you a quick story, because I actually had to stop doing this, because on college football Saturdays, I host a Discord channel conversation. And we have about 60,000 people on the BettingPros Discord channel. When we started it back in, I think we started it in somewhere like August of 2021. I think we started it. We had 0. And so now, 4 years later, we're up to 60,000 users. So we started to do a Saturday morning. Essentially, I called it the Discord channel bet, where people got to nominate different plays, and I would bring them up on stage on Discord, and they would say, okay, I like Penn State -3 today, or I like the over in the Texas Tech game. And so I would list all of the plays, like there'd be 7 or 8 plays, and we would vote. They would actually go in and vote as to which one would be the pick. Sim, they lost 13 straight weeks. I would bet it. I would put my own money down. I would bet it. They lost. They went 1-14 over a 15-week schedule, and I went, I'm done. I go, that's it.
That's actually impressive, but even that's
I go, I'm
funny.
done. So how would we, if we did that on Kutt, how would we do that? Like, what's the way, if we wanted to have a group bet, how do you do it on Kutt?
Yeah. Well, first off, I'll start by saying that sounds like a good idea, and it sounds like you could make a lot of money betting against your audience, right?
I told them that became a running joke. That became the best fade of the week was the Discord channel bet. I was like, guys, just bet against this. It's automatic money. Like 100%. The audience. Yeah. It was a great look at how tough it is to actually gamble, because groupthink doesn't work.
Does not work. Yeah, it's funny. I'm a quick side note. Game 7, every single person was on the Pacers on Kutt, and literally you saw how that turned out.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, look, to answer your question, one of two things. Number one, you obviously let's assume that you've created a group, right, on Kutt. Okay. Call it your Saturday morning Discord, whatever.
Right.
And then from there, you literally can post picks to your group, right? Say, hey, I'm choosing. I'm a South Carolina fan, unfortunately, a long-suffering South Carolina fan. South Carolina is a 7-point underdog. Let's assume. I'm taking South Carolina +7. You post that to the group, and then people in the group can actually take the other side of that bet, right? And it's not just a one person takes all. It actually, you can break that down in $10 increments. So multiple people can actually take $10 with that bet. $10 is the minimum right now.
Okay.
But in a way, we call this pooled betting, right? Group betting, where it doesn't have to necessarily be a one-to-one. It could be one to many, or what we're also working on is multiple to multiple, right? Where basically people can quote unquote crowd fund a bet, and then people could take the other side. They can also crowd fund the opposite side of that as well. But yeah, it's a fairly simple process where you could create whatever bet, or use one of Kutt's markets that's already up, and then post that bet to the community, and then other people can take the other side of that, only within that community.
I was thinking about this the other day as to ways of combining fantasy football and sports gambling, and how do you cross over those conversations? And Kutt came to mind. Have you guys ever had anybody where in their fantasy football league take bets on either side as to which lineup's going to win?
That's actually not part of our current roadmap. I
Okay.
do actually, but that is very interesting. That's essentially what happens all the time in fantasy football groups, which is side bets, right? Same thing in
Yeah.
poker. Poker side bets happen a lot, right?
Right.
Hey, we're competing against essentially, a table of people, but I want to bet against you. Who's going to have the better hand? And so that's a very common occurrence, right? Is these derivatives, for lack of a better word, these derivative bets, these prop bets, these side bets, and that's huge. And I will tell you flatly, I'm honest to a fault. I'll tell you flatly, we don't have a ton of that right now, but that is exactly the type of stuff we want to have going forward. And that's, again, when we talk about social, that's the exact type of, thing that we have on the roadmap, thing that we envision for the future, which is you and your buddies, you and your Discord followers, you and your audience, y'all have your own group, you have your own community, and you have bets and betting markets that are relevant just to you. No one else knows about, no one else cares about, but you and your friends and your followers and your audience want to make these bets. And this is the perfect place to have a one-stop shop to make those bets, settle on those bets, and have a lot of fun in the process.
It's very, very interesting. Okay, last topic, and it's kind of a 30,000-foot look view as to where we are from a gambling perspective, a U.S. gambling perspective, sports betting perspective. You guys are in a unique silo. When you look at the country and you look at sweepstakes sports books, you look at social sports books, you look at Kalshi prediction markets, what's your take on the overall ecosystem? Like, are we in a good place right now in the country? Are we all over the place? Like, what's your look as a gambler, as a sports bettor? What's your feeling about the industry as a whole?
This would take 30 minutes and probably 4 or 5 drinks for me to really tell you how I feel. I'll try to keep it high level.
Okay.
What I will tell you is this, and I'll start with Kutt first, and then I'll back up. So we operate in a very niche position, a very nuanced position, which is to say we are a peer-to-peer betting platform that has social features that allows you to bet on things besides sports. So we're not sweepstakes. We are not daily fantasy. We're actually a skill-based game, right? We have our legal opinion. We have our regulatory T's crossed and I's dotted. But the industry is changing, right? And so the goalposts are constantly shifting. I'm very familiar with some of your other interviews. You have a lot of bright minds in the industry who all have opinions on how this is working. And what I'll tell you is this: in 2018, when they said, "Hey, let's let the states decide," I don't think they envision what we have now, which is, on one hand, you have essentially a bit of a capitalist, hey, if one state wants to do it one way and one state wants to do the other, maybe the market can decide. The problem is they are so vastly different that it's not working, right? And a bigger problem is the fact that a lot of the people who are writing the rules, writing the laws, are in the back pockets of the probably, I don't know, hopefully I don't get in trouble here, are in the back pockets of a lot of the big boys, right? And so unfortunately there has not been a lot of progress downstream. When I say downstream, in the startups and the tangential type of offerings and the innovation, right? And so what we really have seen is essentially a duopoly at the top in the traditional books. And so what we're now seeing is for better or for worse, are startups and medium-sized companies who are saying, well, we're going to try a different way and see what happens, right? And so it's a lot of whack-a-mole that's going on right now. And on one hand, it's frustrating because startups like ourselves, we don't have a ton of guidance. But there's really no way for us to compete against the big boys. If you're saying, hey, you got to buy a license for $5 million or $10 million, that's not going to happen. That's whoever wrote those was very nearsighted. They wanted a quick money grab, and now they're having to pay the price, right? And you see this in Illinois right now. Illinois just introduced that additional tax. It's like the people that are writing these laws, they do not understand the ecosystem, and they don't want to understand the ecosystem, right? They want to make as much money as possible and squeeze as much juice out of their existing limits that they can, instead of inviting everyone to the table and saying, hey, let's work out a framework that works for everybody. And I think because of all that, you've seen the prediction markets recently, who are essentially trying to circumnavigate everything, right? And look, I think, and I know you have your own opinions about that. I'll say this: I'm not mad at them whatsoever. I'm not sure if it's going to work. It may not. I'm not mad at them for trying. I think what we're going to see in the next year is going to be a bit of a clash of the titans, where the old guard, the status quo, the DraftKings and FanDuels, they're not going to put up with new people coming in and saying, hey, we went to the CFTC. We went above you, actually. We don't need your permission anymore. And I don't think that's going to be a pretty battle. I think there's one train of thought that says if you can't beat them, join them. And I think you're already seeing some murmurs of like, hey, maybe FanDuel partners with Kalshi. Who knows? Yeah. Maybe FanDuel creates their own. But I say all that to say, I'm rambling a bit here, but I say all that to say, the existing framework does not work. The state by state approach is not working. Now, on the flip side, I don't think anyone wants a full centralized, governance where someone in Washington decides that, hey, if you want to participate in the sports betting industry, you need $10 million minimum. That's also not going to work. The unfortunate reality is it needs to go somewhere in the middle, but I do think that at some point they're going to have a tiered system where they say, hey, if you're this particular model and you're this particular size, you have one set of rules, and we're going to encourage and foster innovation downstream. And the downstream companies, the startups, they have a different set of rules. And perhaps you figure that out and say, hey, you get bigger, you want access to more states, then yes, you can pay more. But I think the genie's out of the bottle with innovation. Consumers are now seeing that they have options, especially in non-traditional sports betting states. And I think it's going to be tough to put that back in. So,
Sim,
I feel like I went around a lot there. Sorry, but
no, it's good. Like I think a lot of people.
I really feel.
I think a lot of people will agree with you about where we are and what we're doing and where we need to go, because my last question will be about the startup world for people like your company. You guys got involved with this now. If you were, say, starting Kutt today, could you start Kutt today?
In some senses, it's a lot easier because I think that betting has been welcomed a bit more than it was. I mean, look, even as recently as a year ago, betting as a terminology was still very taboo. You talk to a lot of investors. I can't touch that. That's a vice. You talk to payment process. Oh, I can't touch that. It's very mainstream now. So in some senses, it's better. Other ways, look, it's, in my opinion, it's very oversaturated at this point. I think we were lucky enough to, even though I feel like we were behind the eight ball for a long time, and in some ways still are, we're lucky to have started when we started, right? Now imagine starting a daily fantasy app now. It'd be impossible because there are literally hundreds of daily fantasy apps out there right now. So yeah, I mean, I think it goes both ways. Look, if I'd have known the heartache and the gray hairs it would have given me, and the heartburn, would I start all over? Maybe not. But I will say that I think this industry is still in the very early innings. And I do think that a lot of innovation is still left to, still going to happen. I think it's just a question of whether or not the powers that be, and when I say that, I mean the service providers, the lobbyists, the regulators, the government, the congressmen, congresswomen, if they are willing to foster that innovation and foster these new ideas, because ultimately the consumer will benefit from that, And that's who the focus should be on, right? The focus should be on you as a consumer feeling confident in the product you're using, having a wide variety of products to use, options at least. And as of right now, a lot of the stuff we're seeing from the powers that be, I think is not conducive to all of that and is not going to be very user friendly, which, for better or for worse, creates another problem, which is kind of the gray market and black market areas. So we don't want that.
Sim Harmon is the CEO of Kutt. Thank you for joining us here today on the Sharp Report. We appreciate you. If folks want to go and get an account, how can they do so? How can go and do so?
Kutt.com, Kutt.com. You can also visit us on the App Store, iOS. You can just search for Kutt, Kutt. We are not on the Google Play Store, but if you have an Android or a desktop, you can visit play.kutt.com to download there. But yeah, I tell everyone, Kutt.com, we have download links for both. So that's probably the easiest way to do it.
Very cool. If you guys like this conversation, hit the like button. Tell us what you think in the comment section. We're back every single month. Next month for another episode of the Sharps Report here with Betting Pros.
Thank you so much for me. I do appreciate it.